Vegans don't eat any animal products, and that includes dairy. So then, how do vegans get enough calcium? Plants, just like everything else that we eat. So today we're going to be talking about what calcium is, why we need it, how much we need, can you get too much, and where you can get calcium on a fully plant-based diet. Hey everyone, my name's Amy and I happen to be a certified personal trainer and a nutrition student here to help you take control of your diet and lifestyle for your health, the planet, and the animals. Today we're going to be talking about calcium. So let's get into the video. What is calcium? Calcium happens to be an element, a metal, and a mineral. So let's break that down. Firstly, calcium is an element, meaning it can be found right here on the periodic table of elements. Calcium also happens to be a metal, meaning it's part of the metals section of the periodic table of elements,
and would have similar properties if you were able to get a big piece of it.
And even though it is a metal, you can't find huge chunks of it out there in the environment. That's partially because it's also a mineral, which means that it's found in smaller quantities. And it's actually important for us, other animals, as well as plants. How much calcium do we need? The recommended daily allowance for adults over the age of 18 all the way up to the age of 70 is 1,000 milligrams per day. Once you get to the age of 70, that shoots up to 1,200 milligrams per day to try to help prevent bone loss. Now, if you're curious about how much anybody under the age of 18 would need, then I highly suggest checking out the table that is down in the description box here, because it will break down how much calcium is needed at different age groups, including for children. What happens if we don't get enough calcium? You can wind up with symptoms like muscle aches and cramps, numbness in your arms or legs, coarse hair, extreme fatigue, seizures, abnormal heartbeats, and even low bone mass, and increased risk of osteoporosis. Now, chronic calcium deficiency in children is also really important to think about, because children can wind up with rickets where your bones don't actually form properly because of issues with the cartilage. Now, don't worry, if you wind up putting all of your food for one day into Chronometer and find that you've hit 999 milligrams of calcium for that day, you're not going to wake up the following morning and break your leg getting out of bed. It takes a long time for any of the symptoms to happen. And so while having one day where you happen to be somewhat low in calcium isn't too big of a deal, over time it can turn into an issue. Can you get too much calcium? So just like how you can get too little calcium, you can actually also get too much. Just about every vitamin and mineral has a safe limit that you need to stay under before you could possibly start getting some symptoms. Now, different vitamins and minerals, the symptoms are more or less dangerous, but it's still a good idea to stay under that. Now, the limit is actually called the upper tolerable limit, and the upper tolerable limit for calcium happens to be 2,500 milligrams a day for people between the age of 18 and 50, and once you get over 50, that drops down to 2,000 milligrams per day. Now, it's really hard for you to get too much calcium from food because your body is good at being able to regulate it.
And most of the time, having high blood calcium levels is due to underlying conditions.
Chronically too much calcium can actually lead to some issues as well. Poor muscle tone, nausea, constipation, weight loss, fatigue, risk for kidney stones, and even irregular heartbeats and a higher risk of death from heart disease. Now, if you go onto Chronometer and decide to put in your diet and find that you're at 1,001 milligrams of calcium, you're not immediately going to start experiencing these symptoms. You need to be having your calcium consumption be up towards or even above the upper tolerable limit for a decent bit before you start getting any of this. What does calcium calcium actually do in our bodies? Firstly, let's talk about our bones. Now, most people know that calcium is very important for our bones. In fact, that's actually where 99% of the calcium in our bodies is found. It happens to be there in the form of hydroxyapatite, which is a combination of calcium and phosphorus, which is what forms the structure of our full skeleton and our teeth. Another reason that it's really good to have so much calcium in our bones is that our bodies are able to use the calcium stores that are there to help keep our blood calcium levels at a stable point, meaning our bodies can actually control how much bone is broken down and how much is remineralized depending upon how much calcium we have in our bloodstream. Surprisingly, calcium is also incredibly important for our muscles. So when our brain sends a signal down our nerves for us to contract a specific muscle, we actually release calcium into the muscle cell. And that's because of how our muscles contract. So there's two special proteins that are involved in contracting our muscles: actin and myosin. Now, these two would normally be constantly holding on to each other if it wasn't for two proteins that were actually blocking the actin from connecting with the myosin. Tropomyosin actually covers actin so it can't constantly be connecting to the myosin, thus making us really tense all the time. And the troponin is on top of it to lift it up as needed. Troponin actually can move the tropomyosin away from actin in the presence of calcium, allowing for actin and myosin to connect and our muscles to contract. And when we don't want our muscles to contract anymore, the concentration of calcium drops, and therefore the actin and myosin are separated. Calcium also happens to be really important for our hearts. Calcium likes to give away 2 of its electrons. Well, that makes it positively charged, and that's a really big plus for our bodies. That means that we can use its charge to help us out. Most of the nerves in our body use the charges on potassium and on sodium to help make small electrical signals that help our body get messages everywhere. However, our heart is unique in that it actually uses calcium from our blood to be able to help with that signaling. So the main way that we get messages across our body is by using little electric charges called action potentials, and they normally, when graphed, will look something like this.
With a strong flow of sodium into the cell, followed by a strong flow of potassium out of the cell.
However, the ones for the heart have a little bit of a pause in the middle due to influx of calcium.
And this very calcium becomes the calcium that is then used to allow the heart to contract.
Where do vegans get it? Sadly, we can't just go pick up a hunk and take a bite out of it to get enough. So we need to eat food in order to get the amount of calcium that we need. For people who don't eat a fully plant-based diet, you can tend to get quite a bit from dairy products. There can be some issues with those dairy products, as I have explained in some of my other videos. There are actually quite a few things that vegans can eat. A half a cup of extra firm tofu can have 464 milligrams. 1 cup of almond milk can have 442 milligrams. 1 cup of soy milk can have 301 milligrams. A cup of rice milk can have 283. Collard greens, cooked turnip greens, and cooked kale, all at 1 cup, can have various levels. 1 tablespoon of ground chia seeds can have 76 milligrams. And those are only some of the more common plant food has calcium in it. There are also pretty exotic ones. 1 cup of cooked mustard spinach can have 284 milligrams. A cup of cooked amaranth leaves can have 276. 1 cup of cooked nopales, or cactus paddle, can have 244 milligrams. 1 cup of cooked taro root can have 204. A cup of cooked bok choy can have 185. And half a cup of cooked mature soybeans can have 131. So I really hope this video helped you be able to understand calcium more, be able to know why we need it, how much we need, how much is too much, and where you can get it. If you want to find a little bit more information about vegan sources for calcium, I have some links down in the description box. With that, there's going to be a section that talks about good sources of calcium for vegans. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed this and that you always remember to love God, eat greens, and get moving. See you in the next video.